Good day, everyone. Good day, Miss Claire. Everyone consumes news as it is our primary source of information on what is happening in our society from local to global context. However, even when we read an article of the same topic, we still have these varying perceptions on the issue. The same thing applies to how we perceive their headlines, and such is an important notion to uncover. So join us in this agenda as now on headlines that talk of implicatures and presuppositions. This is brought to you by Julie Cantillon, Jelcy Carlos, Stewart Collano, Curtis, and yours truly, Christian Bermejo. Headlines are known to be attention grabbers and the window to the theme of an article. Specifically, they shape how readers think, thus affecting their stance depending on the framing of these headlines. According to Al Saidi and Jabber, 2020, editors or writers could orchestrate the language of headlines using different linguistic and pragmatic aspects to relate the issues in the news. And such an idea makes it necessary to explore its pragmatic aspects, especially implicatures and presuppositions. Implicature denotes the act of meaning or implying something by saying something else. Meanwhile, presupposition refers to the meaning linguistically encoded in the context in the text. And great headlines to analyze regarding this idea are those concerning ABS-CBN shutdown. For context, news media is crucial in society, especially as it serves as the means of transmitting information to the public. Its existence in a territory marks freedom. However, in the Philippines, ABS-CBN, the largest and widest broadcasting network in the country, has been forced off the air back in 2020 during the former President Duterte's rule, which is not new, as such also happened during the regime of the former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. in 1972. And these correlate to, as they say, out of personal vendetta. But beyond its shutdown, the real enigma is that it happened during the spike of coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19.
The members of the group search and pick 5 headlines each news outlet randomly, except in the People's Television Network that has only 2 headlines. After the selection of what headlines to analyze in each media station, the members proceeded to explain the implicatures and presuppositions found in them, then constructing a brief statement of what they have observed about how the headlines are written by that specific news outlet. Lastly, after collecting the analyses, the group moved forward in establishing a summary for the findings as well as synthesizing the differences and similarities between the headlines in each outlet. Moving on to the findings and analysis in the headlines, we have first the ABS-CBN news. For headline 1, in the 2022 elections, remember the 70 who voted versus ABS-CBN franchise labor leaders. The headline implies that there has been a dispute during the Philippine 2022 elections, and it is between ABS-CBN and 70 people who voted against them renewing their franchise. As for the presupposition, we have the situation has happened, the situation has happened already, and ABS-CBN has lost because of the many votes made by these 70 individuals. For headline 2, timeline, the vote that killed ABS-CBN's franchise renewal bid. The headline implies that there has been a series of events before ABS-CBN has ended, and it assumes that the main topic has already happened in the past, and it is just a brief recalling of how it has unfolded. For headline 3, ABS-CBN shutdown comes at worst possible time amid pandemic, says rights watchdog. This headline implies that ABS-CBN shutdown must not be the one being prioritized, and second, the timing to address it is the worst to do, especially since there was a more crucial issue to talk about. As for the presupposition, the pandemic should be the one prioritized first before anything else triggered by the word amid. For the next headline, fear of shutdown haunts ABS-CBN anew. The headline implies that shutting down ABS-CBN is an alarming and terrifying issue, and the presupposition is that the shutdown of the network has already happened before, and that is triggered by the word anew, which means again. The implication in headline 5 is that ABS-CBN is a good source for credible news that is being delivered for free to Filipino people. And as for the presupposition, it will be harmful to shut down ABS-CBN in these times as it is also denying the right of the people to be informed by a source that is reliable. Overall, ABS-CBN News carefully tread what words to use in order to influence the emotions and thoughts of the readers about the situation ABS-CBN is in against the government at the time of the pandemic. Moving on,
We have also analyzed the news headlines from the Raptor. For the first headline, we have a year after ABS-CBN shutdown, what the Supreme Court could have done. The headline implies that the Supreme Court might have taken actions and made rulings in response to the network station's closure a year ago. The headline presupposes that there were various possible actions or decisions that the Supreme Court could have taken in response to the ABS-CBN shutdown. For the headline 2, we have ABS-CBN goes off air after an NTC order. The headline implies that first, The network station cooperated immediately after being told to shut down by the National Telecommunication Commission. Secondly, there is a sudden loss of information sources because one of the country's largest news outlets has been ordered to close down. The headline presupposes that NTC has the power over ABS-CBN and their order must be followed immediately. Secondly, Filipinos lost one of their primary sources of news and information. For headline 3, we have Duterte legacy, ABS-CBN shutdown leaves many people in the dark during super typhoon. The headline implies that to consider Duterte's legacy is a negative one, as it potentially put the lives of people in danger. The headline presupposes that Duterte's legacy was him being able to close down one of the major media networks, ABS-CBN, which also risked the life of his people in danger during disasters due to the lack of essential, fast, and reliable information. For headline 4, we have in photos, Filipinos make noise nationwide to protest ABS-CBN shutdown. The headline implies that the support that the ABS-CBN network gets from Filipinos nationwide through their rallies, marches, social media campaigns, and other kinds of public outrages. The headline presupposes that in order to show their dissatisfaction towards the decision to shut down ABS-CBN, Filipinos nationwide protest in the most obvious and noisy way. For headline 5, we have ABS-CBN shut down a betrayal of 11,000 workers, labor groups say. Headline implies that the closure of ABS-CBN caused thousands of workers to lose their jobs, which was described in the headline as a betrayal. The headline presupposes that the consequences of the shutdown of ABS-CBN is beyond press freedom and press independence. It also affected the livelihoods and welfare of a sizable workforce. In conclusion, pragmatic features may be seen in their headlines, such as implicatures and presuppositions, which are straightforward and comprehensible that helps the public understand and analyze the news accurately.
So let us now proceed to Philippine Star. The first headline here implies that a shutdown of ABS-CBN has significant repercussions in the country that causes negative ideas, and that its headline presupposes that due to the phrase crosses dangerous line, the said shutdown has dangerous after effects. The second headline here implies that the ABS-CBN shutdown was a negative phenomenon as it affected various Filipinos, implies that the urban poor or the marginalized sectors are the most affected of the unfortunate event. Likewise, these headline presupposes that ABS-CBN is a major player and a notable source of information and entertainment for Filipinos, which in turn the shutdown took from them, especially from the urban poor. Third headline here implies that the ABS-CBN shutdown attacks press freedoms, draining free speech in the Philippines. It also presupposes that the ABS-CBN shutdown is controversial due to the point that it has attracted Asian media unions to demand franchise renewal. The fourth headline here implies that the government is responsible for officially ending the free-to-air broadcast of ABS-CBN, that the government has taken action to prevent ABS-CBN from broadcasting, particularly in its free TV channels under its locked franchise, and that the government can take away or recall frequencies given to media entities. And likewise, these headline presupposes that the recalling of frequencies assigned to ABS-CBN sales is shut down, and that the government recalled the frequencies assigned to ABS-CBN. And so here we have the fifth headline, which implies that the shutdown was due to the oligarch nature of ABS-CBN and that it is part of the oligarch extraction efforts by the former President Duterte, which renders it as an attack on press freedom as ABS-CBN is a media entity, and that it presupposes that the former President Duterte was happy. He even celebrated after the shutdown of ABS-CBN as it marks his success in dismantling the oligarchy. Therefore, based on the headlines analyzed from the Philippine Star, that it has well-integrated pragmatic features such as implicatures and presuppositions, remarkably amplifying the ABS-CBN shutdown, thus that making these headlines straightforward but powerful. These headlines could also draw inferences on the issues such as its nature, repercussions, and the attention it received on a macro international scale. So now we dwell on People's Television Network or PTV4. Here we have the first headline, which implies that the negligence of the House of Representatives caused the fate of ABS-CBN and that the Makabayan lawmakers desired ABS-CBN to operate again, thus forcing the House to renew its franchise. And that its headline presupposes that the said media entity is up for an agenda for franchise renewal and that the Makabayan lawmakers are already taking an initiative actively pursuing even for its renewal. Lastly, here we have the second headline, which implies that the misbelief about the motivations and actors behind the shutdown of ABS-CBN, particularly that the former President Rodrigo R. Duterte has something to do with it. And that the headline presupposes that the former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte did not mandate or influence the ABS-CBN shutdown. The presented headlines from TV only shows that they wrote headlines in a conventional manner, that they are straightforward and plain. Put simply, they are generic and they are playing safe. Hence, the implicatures and presuppositions embedded within each headline frame a positive attitude towards the political reality in the country.
The next news outlet we have here is the Manila Times. The first headline we have here is that the headline ABS-CBN complies with NTC order. This headline implies that there was an order issued by the NTC that the ABS-CBN is expected to adhere. And this headline presupposes that an order was made by the NTC for the ABS-CBN network to comply. Next we have is ABS-CBN fights closure in court. This headline piece implies two things. First, ABS-CBN considered the closure as an unjust decision. Secondly, ABS-CBN needed the court's presence to review the said decision. And this headline presupposes that ABS-CBN is having a problem with its closure and is taking legal action to challenge it. Third headline we have here is the ABS-CBN franchise ends. This headline implies that ABS-CBN franchise has no validity to operate. And the headline presupposes that ABS-CBN had its franchise to operate before. Fourthly is that the NTC orders ABS-CBN to shut down operations. The headline implies that first, NTC had an official mandate to stop the operations of the ABS-CBN network. And secondly, the ABS-CBN was required to cease its operations. And this headline presupposes that the ABS-CBN had its full operation before the directive set forth by the NTC. Lastly, the Duterte to block grant of ABS-CBN franchise. The headline implies that the former President Duterte has a personal vendetta or intention to deny and hinder the franchise requests of the ABS-CBN. And this headline presupposes that ABS-CBN is currently working on its franchise renewal. So in conclusion, the pragmatic inferences that the Manila Times exhibit can be traced on its straightforward wordings approach. It is noteworthy observation that the Manila Times did not incorporate emotionally induced wording to develop an emotional-centered interpretation to perceive political reality.
Now let's proceed with the news outlet Sunstar. In our first headline, we have the headline implies that first, the government must focus on health and economic crisis. Second, conveying information to the public is necessary, considering that the network had the broadest reach in the country. Shutdown of the ABS-CBN happened at an unfortunate time when its function and role were opportunely crucial. Second, we have this headline implies that the public was horrified and outraged by the closure of ABS-CBN. The word amid is the presupposition trigger in the headline. It presupposes that ABS-CBN's shutdown happened when the country is facing a global pandemic. For our third headline, we have the headline implies that shutting down ABS-CBN will affect many employees of the network. The headline presupposes that ABS-CBN shutdown is a form of labor oppression and injustice to the individuals who work at the said media company. Fourthly, we have this headline implies that Duterte is not the one behind the termination of the network's operation. Headline presupposes that there were reports that directly blame Duterte for the ABS-CBN shutdown. And lastly, we have this headline implies that the network's closure would affect the Filipino people in getting information needed during the pandemic. It presupposes that the network has ceased its operation in the Philippines broadcast media. So overall, the headlines presented in Sunstar News can be categorized into three. First, the effect of the shutdown on the general public. Second, the response of the public upon the shutdown of the news media amidst the pandemic. And third, the politics behind the network's closure. All of the headlines are associated with how the network shutdown affects the public perception of politics during the pandemic. It also showcases the government's priority and the people's response to this. It can be seen how the usage of implicatures and presuppositions signifies the stance of the news media outlet.
The similarities we found from the headlines are: the headlines aim to provide accurate information to the public. The headlines emphasize threats on media freedom. It highlights various public response and protests. And it presents the complex interplay of motivations behind ABS-CBN shutdown. Moving on to the differences we found, the headlines carry manipulative messages. It vary with the details they provide, present differing political perspectives, and were crafted with languages that reflects the political stance of the news outlets. In conclusion, implicatures and presuppositions play a crucial role in shaping public perception and understanding of the complex issues surrounding press freedom and government actions in the Philippines. Thank you.